Hey guys, just wanted to say that Mysteries of Dysteria now officially has its own t-shirt line. You can get the whole crew. We have Blank, Ricky, Thorin, and Cozy, all with their own special designs. You can get them in 3 different colors, multiple different sizes. All of that is on my Etsy shop, which is in the link in the description down below. Hope to see you enjoy the rest of the video. Hello everybody, it's tgcf here, and this video is sort of the sequel to a video I made a while back where I tried doing the 10 art style challenge with my character Silver. Since it had been a while since I made that video, my art has changed quite a bit, and there were some other styles I wanted to try, so I decided to try the challenge again, but make it even harder for myself. Since that video, I made a couple of other designs for Silver since I gave them the ability to change their form, so I decided that I would use those designs for specific styles, and I decided instead of bust shots that I would draw all of these as full body. So you can probably guess it, but this video took a while to make. Again. But to make it slightly easier, I decided to draw my style as the last one. I know the standard is to draw your style first, but I didn't want to run into the same situation as last time, where I had to draw my style again because I felt like it had gotten a little old by the time I had all the other styles done. This also helped a lot because I didn't feel rushed on any of these, and was able to take the time I needed to get the styles right. I also tried not repeating any designs from last time, with one exception. If you haven't seen that last video, you can give it a watch if you want, but if not, let's go ahead and jump into the first one. So for all of these, I did go ahead and draw the sketch in IBS Paint X, and then moved it over to my computer. But for the first style, I really wanted to try the style from E.V.A. I actually did attempt this style way back in one of my first attempts that I never published anywhere. E.V.A. is a great anime, and one of the things that I love about it, besides the flowiness and expressiveness of the animation that you usually get with trigger animations, are the colors they use. The backgrounds and different lighting colors that they use for the characters is amazing, and definitely a big inspiration for the colors I use. I think this is also where I got my rule of drawing the background first before rendering, so I can get the colors right, since the shading of the characters in the show have a lot in common with the background. I was rewatching the anime for this drawing, and while doing so, I saw a bunch of pretty scenes that I wanted to save for reference, but couldn't save them, so I had to stick with pictures from online. I also wanted to try and replicate the official artworks of the style of these shows so that the more rendered styles would look cohesive with the rest. The anatomy was pretty interesting, especially around the face. They do that little dip where the chin area is that I've noticed other anime do. The biggest thing was the shading. I tried making it look flowy and loose, but still be cel shaded. Looking at some screenshots, I'm not sure if they used multiply for the shading layer, so I kept mine on normal. Obviously that makes it look lighter on the darker areas, but that's what it looks like in the anime too, so I think that fits in well. I tried using 2 different colors for the highlights, being pink and cyan, to look like some of the official art I found. Also in a lot of the shots they used 2 different colors. I also colored the line art for this reason. Adding their swirly eyes was actually pretty easy, and I pretty much took my best guess as to how their wings and halo would be drawn. This is something I would have to do for a bunch of other styles, since Silver has very odd eyes and their wings and halo are just kind of floating there, so you would have to change how eyes is kind of drawn in a lot of these styles, and then figure out how the wings and halo would look, because most of these I can't find reference for that, so yeah. And to finish it off, I added a blue overlay over them, and that was the E.V.A. style. The thing that I liked most about this drawing are the colors. I think I got those down pretty well, and I actually did try doing a background study as well, because I was going to do background studies for all of these as well, but nope, not doing that. Did this and I was like, nah, I'm good. But anyway, let's move on. Next up is the style of Omori. Now, I haven't finished the entire game yet, so please no spoilers in the comments, but so far I love this game, and I'm actually pretty close to the end. At first, it felt very much like Undertale to me, which isn't a bad thing at all, since I love Undertale too, but as I played further, I definitely see it as just its own thing, and it's great. It can be really funny and cute, but also surprisingly really scary. Like the scene with the spiders, that sucked Dude, that sucked really bad for me. One thing that I also really love about this game is the style, with all its hatching goodness. I even made an animation video about Leonard Illustrious using the song from the trailer. I tried replicating a similar feel with the animation and style, which I haven't talked about what I did for that animation before, but basically I just sort of went over each scene and redrew the line art in each cell for like three cells, and then just duplicated those for the whole thing, which I'm pretty sure is what they also do for Omori. It looks like what they do for Omori as well, but I love doing that, and so yeah, I do that for other animations of mine now too. Out of all these styles, I think this one looks the closest to the style I was going for. I even found a replica of the brush used for the line art, and it was really good. Unfortunately, I found this brush after making that animation. It's fine, that's fine. I was actually kind of surprised to find that sketching the anatomy wasn't too far off from how I do it. Same goes for the clothes. And finding reference for Silver's suit outfit wasn't hard at all, since, did a lot of that in there. I wasn't sure about the pin at first when I started using it for the line art, but as I kept going, I found I liked it way more, like the original art style. Now for the areas that I was going to do the hatching shading. I selected them separately so that they wouldn't overlap with other areas and filled it with a base color. Then went to work with a different color for the hatching. For the hair and suit, I used black, and for the boots, gloves, and tie, I used the base colors. And I just hatched it all in super messily. It was really fun. The swirly eyes were also really easy to add here. I just drew the eyes in all black like Omori's, then drew the swirl with white. Something I did too was add these blush marks, which is something all the characters have. I wasn't sure about it at first, but I think it looks super cute. And finally, for the halo and wings, I decided to draw them super simply. And at first I decided to color them with the colors the other characters have in the Dreamscape world, but then I decided to shift the hue to be these reds. I'm glad I did it this way, because if I had started with just the reds, I don't know if it would still look like it belonged in this style. And that was it for the Omori style. I had a lot of fun with this one. And like I said, I think it's one of the ones that I came closest to the original style with. And it's one of my favorites overall. I know that doing this, drawing Silver in this style, you can tell how much Silver unintentionally looks like Omori/Sunny. That was very unintentional. But surprisingly, even though they look a lot like them, I would say they look like they have a lot of more life in them than Omori, which is odd. But yeah. Next style is from Violet Evergarden. I really love the style of this anime. It matches the story, which, yes, did make me cry. For this one, I decided to use a different design of Silver's, which is this one. I chose this one specifically because of the hair, which is one of my favorite things about this style. Finding reference was a bit tricky for the sketching, especially for the legs. Since all of the characters have pants or skirts, I didn't know how to draw bare legs in this style, so I just guessed. I think they look okay, but I really wish I could have had reference for that. I did get plenty of reference for the clothes and hair. I absolutely love how flowy and detailed the hair looks, so I was particularly focusing on that, as well as the face. For the line art, I found a very static pen with no pen pressure sensitivity, and it was really weird to use. I love using brushes that are very pressure sensitive and have a lot of taper, so it wasn't a super pleasant experience, but it looks like the anime, so goal achieved. The face proportions were super interesting to try. The eyebrows are pretty thin and rounded, the eyelashes are pretty detailed, and the way they draw this line under the lip is interesting. Obviously, the thing that I was most excited for was coloring the eyes, since they'll have some more detailed shots in the anime where you see the super shiny eyes, but it wasn't quite there yet. I made sure to keep my flats more desaturated for this one, using darker versions of each color for the shading. I actually used to color this way myself, where I used the same color as my base colors on a multiply mode for shadows. So coloring this way always reminded me of that. Although I'm not sure this is how they actually shade, it's just a guess. The other way could also be that they use black on the lower layer, but I like how this looks better. I also did a shading layer with the whole thing darkened, except for the areas that I knew would be highlighted. At the very end, I also did add in an airbrushed glow layer, but I might have gone a little overboard with it. The eyes were really fun to color once I got a good reference for that. Unfortunately, the swirl doesn't show up as well, but it's super shiny and I like it. Actually, while making this, my art style had developed in a way where I changed the way I rendered eyes, and looking back at this, it's very similar to how they render eyes in Violet, so I got subconsciously inspired by that a couple months ago. And finally, I shaded their gem in the center like Violet's pendant. I did forget to draw their wings in Halo, but I can't even begin to decide how that would look in this style, so yeah. The next style is the style from my favorite manga, Land of the Lustrous, or Hoseki no Kuni. Last time I did this, I replicated the anime style, but for this one, I replicated the style of the manga. This is also one that I feel like I got really close on perfectly replicating the original, which is funny because out of all these, this one is probably the most opposite of my own. The arms and legs are very long, which I do in my style as well, but the hands and feet are really small, and the overall body structure is just way more thin and lanky, where I tend to lean towards drawing my characters with thicker proportions. If you don't know, Land of the Lustrous is a story about these gem people, and the biggest thing about this style is the hair and eyes, which are meant to be super shiny. Now I had to decide while sketching if I was going to try to replicate the style of the manga itself or the cover, since I said I was going to be trying to replicate the official art more. But because I really wanted to try drawing in the manga style specifically, I decided to just replicate the more detailed pages. That's one thing that I found really interesting about the style in manga. Some of the pages have a lot more detail with the shading, the architecture, and the overall composition, while others can look really simple. As a comic artist, I know the technical reason for this being you're drawing a lot of pages and to spin the energy wisely into the pages that matter more, but it's also because the artist plays a lot with negative space in their layouts. I'd recommend watching this video by Lines in Motion that goes over this really well. With that being said, I tried to make sure that all the lines for this one were nice and thin and super flowy, although it's not the cleanest, but just don't look at it too closely. I always have an easy time drawing Silver in this style since their uniform is very similar to what the gems wear. I just decided to give them the sleeves that Moonfos wears. The first thing I did for the shading was lay down the areas I wanted in black and white. Well, actually more of a dark gray, and the shadow or the shading was really interesting to do since the hair and clothes aren't just highlights with white but also with gray. The skin, of course, was shaded with just gray, although I did erase a few dots in it where the light of the hair would be shining on the skin, which is something I also done in the manga. The hair was surprisingly easy to add highlights to, and I think they turned out really good here. A whole lot better than when I tried replicating the anime style, at least. I almost forgot about the eyelashes, which also got some shine in them, and the swirl and the eye. I tried giving them my best guess onto what their wings and halo would look like, so I tried to make them nice and flowy like the rest of the anatomy and shade them like they're made out of gems too. I still don't know what type of gemstone they would be, but I think they look great in this style. So next up, I know I said no repeats from the last one, but this is going to be the only exception. In my last attempt, this was one of the styles I did, and it was Demon Slayer, and it looked super rough. It was definitely my least favorite, and I felt like I could have done so much better, so I decided that this time I would try again. This is a little trickier since it's a full body one, but I actually think it helped make it look a little better in the end. I used older silver for this, and in that old video I said this. Instead of their normal outfit, I gave them a kimono instead because I just thought that bit more. Except I forgot one crucial detail. The main villain wears a suit already. I wasn't smart back then, so this time I got plenty of reference for their design and began. Surprisingly, the anatomy itself wasn't too bad, although I probably did draw the legs a bit too long. The face is where I wanted to focus the most on, since I think it's one of the places I messed up the most last time. I also wanted to try again with the line art to make it look nice and thick in key areas like in the shell. I was pretty excited to ink the nose, since the one good thing to come out of the last attempt was the little 3 mark thing they do in the show on the nose. I incorporated that into my style and have been drawing noses like that in my finished artworks for years now. I don't know why that, out of all things, is the thing I took from this style, but it just looks cute, okay? So we're moving on. The eyes were super interesting to shade, but fortunately, I don't think it looks too out of place since the eyes on this show can really vary. For the rendering, I copied the soft airbrush style from the posters, which I oddly think looks really cool. I think it looks really cool here. A lot of the other show styles for their official art, they'll just do like some airbrushing where the rendering is to make it look more full or more complete, I guess. But I think this one, I pulled it off the best. Do I think this style is an improvement from last time? I definitely think so, but I'm still not 100% satisfied with it. But I think this is as good as it's gonna get for now. Next style was from Genshin Impact. Now, interesting story with this one. Way back when I was first getting started with the game, I made these drawings, which were my characters Ricky and Blank as Genshin Impact characters. These drawings were monumental to my art. One, because the drawing I did with Blank helped me come up with his new style, or his new design, which still is his new design today. And two, because it helped me find my rendering style that I still use to this day. The reason why is because I was trying really hard to mimic the rendering style of the Genshin splash arts, since at the time I really wasn't happy with my rendering style. So yeah, Genshin helped me find my rendering style. It only felt right to include it here. Now for this one, I used Silver's main look, but adjusted it slightly to feel a bit more Genshin-y with a pattern on their tucks and these scarf things that I actually had for them in a past design. Also, this eye thing on their chest, which I do sometimes draw them with. The proportions were a little tricky to nail, and I think I made their legs too long, and the clothing folds were a bit tricky to get right, but after I was done, I began lining with a thin gouache brush, since I thought it looked closest to the line art they used. Once I got to the coloring, I was really surprised to find I actually wasn't too far off the first time I tried this, since it felt pretty natural and similar to my current rendering style. The only different thing was that everything was shaded separately, which I feel like is very standard for styles like this. I've attempted a similar workflow in the past, but I don't really like it because it's a lot of layers and makes everything feel not as whole, if that makes sense. But that's what I did for this one, and I'd only say the only place I couldn't get quite right were the clothes. But I'm really happy with how the skin and hair turned out. Their eyes were also a bit hard to get right since a lot of the characters have varying eyes that are rendered differently. But I kind of just went with how they shade normal eyes, but of course made the pupil with the swirl inside. Another thing I don't think I got entirely right were the size of the eyes. I think I made them too big. Now for their wings and halos, I actually decided to use Paimon's wings and halo as my main inspiration, meaning that their wings look more angelic-like than demonic, but that's okay. I did make them a bit transparent once I was done rendering them, and I was done. I think this turned out much better than my first attempts, because not only is the rendering close to the original style, but also everything else. So yeah, good. Now, I saved this one close to last because it's one I was really nervous about. This style belongs to the artist Starember, or as you might know them as, the artist behind the Heaven's Official Blessing manhwa. Every time I see their art, I just want to eat it because it looks so good. The flowiness of the compositions, the characters, the way they draw faces, the painterly style, it just all looks so good. And fun fact, I was originally going to do this style with my character Lai, but one of the things about Starember's art that I like so much is how they draw and shade long hair. This normally wouldn't be a problem for me since I have a lot of characters with long hair. It just so happens that Lai is one of my only characters that doesn't have long hair. Luckily, Silver's older look does, so that was the main decision behind using Silver again. Sketching was pretty difficult, especially on the clothes. I actually ended up having the hardest time with the clothes throughout the whole thing. Having, again, no idea what brush they used for the line art, I just used the thin gouache brush again. And the line art went really smoothly until I got to the eyes, which I realized I had sketched way too big, so I had to resize them. I've actually experimented with doing these downturned eyelashes in my style, since I like when other artists draw them, and I know it's more realistic. Unfortunately, it doesn't really fit well with my style. Then it was time for the shading, which I did section by section again. I actually had a lot of fun shading the skin and hair. I noticed rather than using add glow layers for extra layers to create shine on the face, they'll just softly erase areas like on the cheeks and tip of the nose, which oddly looks really cute. I also almost forgot to mention that I gave Silver an ear for this one since I wanted to challenge myself to study how they draw ears, and of course they're hwachang shaped. Speaking of which, the one thing I wish I could have done with this is add a little thing, this Homie Starember will, when they draw a hwachang. It's so cute and hot at the same time. I don't know how they achieve that, but yeah, sadly, I can't really imagine giving a silver a fang like some of my other characters. Next was the hair, which I was pretty excited about since I think it's one of Starember's most defining traits in the rendering. Was I able to pull it off? It looks okay, but I think I might have smudged out the highlights too much, which kind of doesn't make it look right. But other than that, the highlights and the rest went okay, pretty similar to how I shade hair normally. The eyes went fine. It's just a little hard to do the swirl, or it's a little hard to see the swirl though. And for the lightest part of the clothes, I pretty much only focused on shading with no highlights because I knew it would get blown out really quickly. I used a smudge tool to blend the shading a bit, and for the darkest parts of the clothes, I completely fudged it in because I was getting tired and you can't even see most of it anyway, so it's fine. I had no idea what to do with their halo, so I kind of just painted it in like some of the smoke effects in the manhwa. Despite some of the negative things I said about this drawing, I do actually really like it. I think it definitely works as a study, which is kind of the point with these challenges. And I got so much closer than I thought I would. I was really nervous starting this one, but I think I pulled it off really well. Now for the last two styles, it took me a while to decide what they would be, but I decided that one of them had to be Avatar. I grew up in the show, it's taught me so many things, and it's one of my main creative inspirations. And yet, I'm not super happy with this one. The main thing I'm not happy about is the head, which I drew really big. The proportions of it just looks off. The hair looks okay, although I do think it sort of strays a bit into my style too much. And we'll talk about the halo in a minute. We'll talk about it. I'm pretty happy with how everything below the neck looks though. The limbs were pretty easy, very similar to how I sketched them. And I gave them shoes for this form because there's no way I'm gonna try to draw detailed feet, okay? A joke I like to make about my style is that they're very Minecraft block-esque, especially in my character designing. So yeah, no, there's no way. I again used a static pen for the line art, and yes, I know I forgot the transparent sleeves. I know. Again, line art wasn't super fun with this pen. The colors were really easy. Just put on some base colors and use darker versions of the base colors for shading, even though they probably just use black. I'm not going to do that. One really interesting thing they'll do, which I didn't notice, is a circle of shadow where the eyes and nose bridge meet. I thought that was pretty neat. I also did add some highlights to match the official art I saw. The way they draw eyes is pretty similar to how I draw eyes in my comics, which is cool, but they'll just use the same dot for the eye shine, which is completely fine. A lot of stylists do this, and I'm just very extra with my designs and like to give all of my characters unique eye shines. And for the halo, I just drew in the shape and used Clip Studio's function of adding an outline to it. It doesn't match at all, but it's all I could come up with. As you can tell, I don't have much to say about the style. It's like the Demon Slayer attempt from the last video, but I can say it does look better than the Demon Slayer attempt from the last video at least. And it's here. And the final style for mine is one that I was very fond about doing, and that style is the Calvin and Hobbes style. This comic is the one that started everything, the one that got me into making characters, making comics, drawing in general, all of that. I remember trying to replicate this style then and having my style be very similar to it. Obviously I didn't pull it off as well, but now that I've been drawing seriously for 5 years, I thought it would be really fun to take a crack at it again. This one was very easy, but I had a lot of fun with it. The kid characters are all drawn super short and kind of chibi-like, with really big heads and small bodies. The most interesting part was figuring out what materials to use. Looking at the colored pages, I can immediately tell what supplies were used, and that is a brush pen and watercolor paint. I actually used the wet wash brush instead of the brush titled watercolor because those are more just like transparent round brushes. For this, I actually used a brush called Wet Wash, which I believe is a default in Clip Studio X, or EX. It worked perfectly. After I filled in the base with white, I clipped all the layers I would need for the colors and filled in each one with that brush, and it looked great. I also used it for the halo. A little bit of the line art too. I tried to make it messier around the hair, especially since the way the artist will draw Calvin, the hair strands never connect, so I just decided to try to do that with Silver's hair as well. I don't have much to say about this one. In total, I only spent about an hour on it, but I do love how it turned out. I think it also looks super close to the original, and it just makes me super nostalgic looking at it. And finally, my own style. I would describe my style as very stylized with anime and cartoon elements, but nowadays I've also been incorporating some realism, especially in the face. I like to draw the underline of the eye much more curved and add in a little tear duct. I've also been trying to draw the eyelid more. As far as the rest of the anatomy, I draw the head pretty big, the torso pretty short, and the limbs super long. This is where you'll see what I was talking about with my anatomy being a little thicker. And I also draw like the limbs curved around where the joints would be. I used to not do this. My limbs were very straight and long, but now I add a little curve there. At this point as well, I don't actually worry too much with clothing folds. It was something I tried really hard to be good at before, and I definitely can draw better folds now, but I also just like drawing less folds because it makes the piece look a little simpler. I've also changed the way I do line art quite a bit. My lines are much thicker, and I've added a whole lot more of my favorite hatching shading in the hair and even some on the eyelashes. This has helped me have a lot of fun with line art, but it can also make my hand hurt a lot. The way that I render has stayed pretty much the same. I have been doing a little experimenting with a little overpainting around the face, and I've been using a glow dodge brush more than, not a glow dodge brush, but a glow dodge layer, more with my glow layers. I like to use more saturated colors when I shade, and I have changed how I rendered eyes a bit, adding more realistic details, and overall just adjusting it so I don't have to rely on the airbrush. And finally, in this one, I can draw the halo and wings like I normally do, finally. While doing this, I noticed a lot of things that I've incorporated into my style since starting this, and some things I didn't even know I did similarly. I do the nose thing still from Demon Slayer, my anatomy has gotten slim with Toho Seki no Kuni, the anime and manga, and also Avatar. My painterly style kind of sort of comes from Starember, my color choices from E.V.A, my hatching shading from Omori, and more. Although I was inspired by all of these things, I kind of take each element and twist it into my own thing, if that makes sense. By the way, if you want to know more about my character Silver, you can watch the video I made talking about them. But that's pretty much all I have to say. And with that, that ends this second attempt at the 10 different styles challenge. I'm much happier with how everything turned out this time, and I think finishing with my style instead of starting with it definitely helped to keep me motivated, as that's actually stopped me from posting my previous attempts. The only thing that I would change is the line art on some of these, since I'm used to working with thicker and messier lines. It was hard for me to keep the line art clean on the styles that needed them. But that's a super small thing that's barely even noticeable. Anyway, with all of that, you can check out my other artworks on my Instagram and Artful. I have my comics on Webtoon, and you can get Lost Hearts on my Etsy shop, the full published version. And that is all. I will see you all in the next video. Bye!